Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5. I'm going to break down all the details you missed, Easter eggs and connections to the game, and the deeper themes of this very dark episode. But I'm going to save all my speculation for parts of the story that lie ahead in the game and the spoilers section at the end of this video. And damn, after this episode, you can really taste those spores, right? And they taste like a fan base rapidly turning on this show. But not here. I'm still loving it, so let's get into it. Also, nerdriot.shop is your one-stop shop for all kinds of great nerdy gear that directly supports New Rockstars, like some of our Last of Us inspired shirts and hats, or something else from our Marvel or Star Wars collections. Episode 5 opens with Hanrahan, Lana Ubach's character who got Isaac to convert from Fedra to the WLF, silently marching through this hospital. Hanrahan observes a doorway to the stairwell basement blocked, not just blocked, but welded shut, like any possible gap for air to pass through sealed. We see the whiteboard in one of the rooms with the Wong-Baker Faces pain rating scale that was originally developed in 1983 to help kids communicate their pain level. The second one was circled here, and one wonders if one of the final appointments in this room was just a kid who felt a little sick after having pancakes made with the wrong flour that morning. Actress Hettian Park plays WLF Sergeant Elise Park. Hanrahan tells Elise that her soldiers think Hanrahan is going to execute her for what she did, and Elise says that if she was getting executed, that Isaac would do it himself, telling us that Isaac is kind of Hanrahan's general, as well as her axeman and torturer who does all the dirty jobs. Hanrahan says that there was a shooting on a WLF Scar border, and Isaac's dealing with that. Depending on when this is, that could be Ellie and Dina's scuffle with the WLF back in episode 4, or since we know Jesse and Tommy followed them to Seattle, it could have been them. But again, we also don't know when this scene is. It could have been a while before the rest of the episode takes place, and Isaac is just dealing with a past incident. Hanrahan says she and Isaac want to know why she killed her own men, and Elise adds, and Leon. Leon, we learn, is her son, and we see him in the basement later spewing a thick cloud of spores. Elise says that her unit was tasked with clearing the hospital and cleared all the floors except the basement, and says this.
Plus the old timer said down there was where they brought the first Cordyceps patients in 03.
And Elise says on B1, the first of the 3 basement levels going down to B3, it was empty. And she also says,
the whole floor was empty, not even rats.
Elise says that they talked to an elderly person who worked at the hospital back in 2003, 26 years before we are now, who knew that they tried to quarantine the infected by moving them to the basement. I'd love to see that old timer's backstory in that first 24 hours, but in addition to the spores we see being bellowed down on B2 and the wall-to-wall fungal outgrowth, this suggests there may be other things down there that are now 26 years in the making. More on that in spoilers. Elise says Leon went through B1 and B2, found Cordyceps on the ground, and then said,
He said it's a mirror.
This freaks Hanrahan the f*** out. We are now officially dealing with airborne spores, ladies and gentlemen, which are an element from the beginning of both games, part 1 and part 2, so that characters will have to put on gas masks in certain enclosed areas. It's kind of why Eugene had a gas mask that he attached a bong to. Season 1 of the show did not include spores yet, perhaps because it would require these pretty actors to cover their faces, and Pedro Pascal already plays a character in a major nerd IP where he has to cover that face. Instead, the show introduced the idea of an underground wiry tendril network that could communicate with runners and clickers across great distances. Season 2 introduces spores as a new adaptation by the Cordyceps, maybe a predatory one like the Stalkers, or maybe just what Cordyceps would naturally do if left in an enclosed, moist environment and left undisturbed for so long. It's yet another example of the environmental threat to the Cordyceps escalating. The fungus is now inventing new, innovative ways to spread and hunt humans. There was already irony to these 2 women in this hospital room smoking hand-rolled cigarettes in a hospital. Now it's also ironic that they're breathing toxic smoke into their lungs while talking about how what they breathe could kill them. Elise Park is a new character for the show, but a mother having to seal her infected son in a basement was a backstory Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann said that they wrote for Tess in season 1. Her husband and son were infected, and she shot her husband but couldn't bring herself to shoot her son, so she sealed him in a basement and left him there. It sounds like they repurposed this horrifying backstory for a new character. And again, Elise says that they only went as far down to B1 and B2, but she earlier said it went all the way down to B3, suggesting that things might be even worse down there. So the opening credits are the same as last week, but in the final shot of Ellie's fungal stalk all by itself, we now really notice those airborne spores. They've always been there since the beginning, but now they carry a greater meaning. A rain puddle outside the Pinnacle Theater reflects the marquee showing Sick Habit, the band of the world of the games, and Dina listens to the Wolf radio that they got from KMAB, using it now to record patrol routes and names. We see her write down the name Brad, and she traces lines to triangulate their movements and figure out what parts of Seattle are clear to walk through. Dina gives a pained expression when Ellie says she'll find a safe way to the hospital, maybe already knowing that there's no safe way. Her future self is kind of feeling that Seraphite arrow plugging into her thigh. The little we saw of Ellie when she was in Fedra school in Boston in that Riley flashback episode of season 1 showed that she was indeed not a good student. But the added scene of Dina with Joel in this season's premiere showed how Dina had a more natural, inquisitive mind for logistic details like this. Ellie leaves Dina behind to figure it out, to explore the theater. Now in the game, Ellie leaves Dina behind right after Dina tells her she's pregnant. And I preferred last episode's version of letting Dina and Ellie unpack these reveals together a bit more. Ellie goes into the theater, and this interior was shot in Vancouver's Orpheum Theater, which has this awesome chandelier and this cool ceiling mural. Ellie finds the left out instruments, I presume of Sick Habit, and we hear Gustavo Santaolala's track Vanishing Grace, Innocence. He composed this for the first game, but we heard this music in season 1 during some particularly emotional beats, from Bill and Frank's last day in episode 3 to Joel and Ellie finding the giraffes in Salt Lake City in episode 9.
It's all right. Can you hurry up? Come on.
Ellie picks up an acoustic guitar and plays
If I ever were to lose you.
This is Pearl Jam's Future Days, a track that's a much bigger deal in the game. And yes, it was a 2013 song that definitely would not exist if Outbreak Day was in 2003, as it is in the show. But Greg Mason made it very clear in the official After Show podcast that they do not care and are putting this song in anyway. The lyrics are just so perfect for the dangerous power of love that Joel and Ellie share. If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Yes, there's something sweet about loving someone so much that if you lose them, you lose yourself. But practically in life, that romantic notion is nuts. You need to be self-sufficient enough that you can grieve and mourn a loved one that you've lost without completely spiraling into violence and self-destruction. Joel and Ellie are both broken people who lose themselves in the worst possible way. In the game, Ellie begins to play this song first in the Valiant record store before stopping and moving on to Aha's Take On Me, but then she does play a bit more of Future Days later in the theater in the game. And she's not on the stage, but in the seats. And then that takes you to a flashback 3 years earlier in a very important memory with Joel that next week's episode 6 will depict. But the camera stays tight on Ellie in this scene as she mentally goes there, but at the end of this episode, we see Ellie waking up to see Joel. So this episode structured the flashback as a tease for next week, and something, interestingly, that Ellie flashes back to not on this peaceful, quiet moment of playing a guitar alone in the theater, but rather on Ellie beating a former Firefly to death in a hospital. So that tells you that next week's episode is not going to go down exactly the way that it did in the game. More on this in spoilers. But it's also interesting that Ellie's moment goes down not in the seats like in the game, but on the stage, which puts her in a more performative headspace, especially when she lowers her voice to this cold-hearted resolve when Dina comes in.
Figure it out? I think so, yeah. Good.
Dina draws a map of the wolf-patrolled parts of this area and how in the middle there's a line of an undefended building, and we see in a little bit that this is a factory filled with stalkers and that the WLF would naturally stay away from this. Dina knows just from listening to the radio chatter that Nora is on the first floor of the hospital on the far end of the north wing, and deduces that they're not worried about the Seraphites listening because the Seraphites don't use this kind of technology. And the fact that Seraphites are not even trying to take this advantage in what is for them an existential war tells us that Malcolm's confidence with Isaac last episode was true. They're always going to get converts from the WLF, and to do that, they have to resort to never actually using any technological advantage. Dina compares them to the Amish, a group that the people of Jackson, and for Dina before Jackson, Santa Fe, probably would have mentioned when the world shut down and everyone had to live without technology. But the Amish do exist in our world in 2025, and there are subgroups who do drive cars and stuff. Dina says that if her baby is a girl, she's going to name her Ellie, and if it's a boy, she'll name him Elijah. And they pass a Noodle Bowl restaurant, which is a location in The Last of Us Part 2 game. We see a sign for it behind Dina that reads, "We're bringing you a fresh new look," which kind of feels like what the Cordyceps is unveiling to the humans this episode. Fresh. They see a pile of corpses of Seraphites under a mural reading "Feel Her Love" with the prophet depicted and their symbol, a mural design taken directly from the game. And then beneath, the WLF has tagged "Feel This, Bitch." While Ellie has seen a few Seraphite and wolf graves, this is the first one she's seen after realizing Dina is pregnant, and she now worries she made a mistake bringing Dina out here. Dina recalls their conversation in episode 3 about the first person they killed, revealing who the first person she killed was. That she used to live in a cabin when she was 8 years old with her mother and sister in a wooded area north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when she was that young, she went out to play and a raider attacked her mother and sister, and she got back too late.
He looked really startled. And when I shot him, he looked more startled. Fuck.
I like this line in the anecdote because yeah, you probably wouldn't expect an 8-year-old girl to be the one to kill you, but also Dina and Ellie were really born into a world of violence. Dina's backstory is similar to the game, only her sister Talia survived the raider attack and for a time raised Dina until she was killed at some point. The game doesn't explore how Dina got from New Mexico to Jackson, Wyoming, and here Dina aggressively snaps back here when Ellie asks, and I feel like there is a story there. Ellie has never heard this backstory. I find it interesting that she never even asked, but as Dina says, everyone in Jackson has had their stories. It's kind of like people talking about where they were on 9/11, and they all think their story is one everyone else needs to hear right now. And maybe Ellie just thought it would be too difficult of a subject to even broach. Dina says what she went through was hard enough, but after Abby killed Joel in front of Ellie and Ellie's head was turned to watch this, Dina has now been elseworlding, thinking if she hadn't gone out to play that day and was forced to watch a raider kill her mom and sister, and if that raider got away, she would hunt him forever. So that's why she supports Ellie's vengeance quest. What doesn't come up here is a difference for the show. Dina was there for Joel's death in that lodge, but by sedating her, Abby's crew spared Dina of having to witness it. So to Dina, Joel was also something of a father figure, so she may be also feeling some guilt that Ellie did have to stay awake and actually see it. It reframes Dina's pose at the end of episode 2, her head slumped over, almost a shameful pose of having a parent horrifically murdered and she wasn't there to see it. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Mother's Day comes around every May like clockwork. For some of us, that's no problem, but for any of you who might have a more fraught relationship with your mothers, it can be a source of significant stress and anxiety. That's the exact kind of thing therapy can help with, and BetterHelp makes starting therapy easy. Anxiety often peaks in the late springtime, but with BetterHelp, you can nip it in the bud. The majority of BetterHelp members seek support for anxiety, and 69% of members report improved anxiety symptoms after just 6 weeks of therapy. Just head to betterhelp.com/newrockstars, fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Let BetterHelp help you rule your anxiety so it doesn't rule you. Click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Dina says,
if I die, it's on me. It won't be your fault. So what do you want to do?
Keep going.
keep going is what Riley said to Ellie after they were bit in the mall.
Option 2.
We just keep going. What are you talking about, Riley? It's over.
It will be, but not yet. It ends this way for everyone sooner or later, right?
That night, we see Dina's line that she drew on the map with the searchlights corresponding to the X's she drew, but there is a gap in the middle where that factory is. Inside, this desk has some 2003 tech, including the square flat screen monitor, Cisco office phone, fax machine, and Rolodex. There's also a Happy Mother's Day card pinned to the desk, presumably by whoever used to sit here, but also probably a nod to Dina's new soon-to-be status as a mother. When Dina shines a light through the door to the factory floor, you can see a drawing of a kitty cat on that workspace to the right. This factory is suspiciously empty with no runners or clickers coming to greet them, and Ellie says,
Haunted but empty.
Huh, just like us.
and Dina begs Ellie not to start firing as soon as things goes to shit because that'll attract the wolves.
You're a little crazy, and that's exciting. That's one of the reasons I love you. But I do want to make it out of here.
You love me?
Ellie goes to say it back.
Oh, I know.
Has Dina been reading Ellie's diary, or just, she just see it plainly on her face? Or by saying, I know, did Dina hit her back with a second I love you in the language of Han Solo, assuming some adults in Jackson probably told them about The Empire Strikes Back? We hear a humming as they move down the corridor.
Do you hear something?
No.
Now, at first, I was like, is this part of the score, or is it a diegetic sound being made by the Cordyceps? But we hear this same sound later in the basement of the hospital. I'll talk about that later. As they move across the floor, in the foreground, we see something that they don't, the bloody bottom half of the Seraphite corpse top half that they're about to see. The fact that this is a Seraphite tells us that some other Seraphite tried to use this same seemingly clear path to sneak into WLF territory, and it didn't work out for them. Dina looks over the tanks, and we hear this weird sing-songy sound. Again, not sure if this is a score or ambient sounds, but I think it might be a stalker trying to mimic the sound of a person to hunt them. Judging by the labels on the barrels they're hiding behind, this factory is for something called Membronics. This logo was also outside the building when they first snuck in, but on the truck depot on the other side of this, we see trucks for Ferguson with the same logo of the Real World Plumbing and Heating Supply Company. Dina looks up and sees a stalker on a crate looking down at them, creating the creepy eye shine effect created by the tapetum lucidum, the layer of tissue in the eyes behind the retinas that reflects visible light back through the retina for nocturnal animals. Humans do not have this since we're diurnal, but the fact that the Cordyceps gives it to these human corpses that they reclaim is another way they're adapting the human physiology to be more predatory. Dina wonders why it hides, and Ellie explains that stalkers, like the one she fought back in the supermarket, hide in the shadows and wait for them to come to it, using the cries that sound like a human in distress to draw them out. Kind of like how cats meow only to humans. They don't meow to other cats, because this is an adapted behavior to mimic the sound frequency of a human baby crying. They point the flashlight back at it, and it's back on the crate, and soon after, a second one appears behind it. Kind of like seeing two hyenas or two wolves, you soon realize you're surrounded. So not only are the stalkers adept at hunting, they are also pack animals. When Dina goes into a caged-in area, she hangs her backpack on the handle, which serves as a practical purpose of lighting Isabella Merced for the scene. I think that's pretty effective. Ellie gets tackled, and then blam, blam, blam! Some mysterious savior reaches down his hand to Ellie, and it's Jesse! The way the scene at first just shows us Jesse's hand is a direct parallel to Abby's moment getting tackled after the fence in episode 2, and then blam, mysterious savior, hand reaches down, and it's Joel. So I think for a second, Ellie might have been praying that it's like the angel of Joel who has swooped down to deliver her. Now in the game, Jesse does surprise Ellie and us by showing up in Seattle in a moment where Ellie is particularly cornered, but it's a bit different. He just kind of pops up behind her and covers her mouth, and then it leads to a really fun sequence against the wolves, referring to the car chase. Dina is not with them in that moment in the game. She's back at the theater. Jesse asks Ellie if she was bit and looks ready to kill her. If not for Dina coming over to swear Ellie was not bitten, Jesse probably would have seen the uncertainty in Ellie's eyes. Jesse leads them out of the factory and keeps them running into the park where the wolves do not follow, because the park is across the boundary into Seraphite territory. Now in the game, Ellie cuts through the park on her way to the hospital where a lot of what is about to happen goes down. Jesse says that both he and Tommy came out after Ellie and Dina to Seattle, and they split up when they got to Seattle to cover more ground. And this comes as a relief to me, because after episode 4, I worried that they were changing things for the show so that Tommy didn't go to Seattle. In the game, Tommy does go out to Seattle first to avenge Joel, and Ellie and Dina go following in his footsteps. There is more stuff that Ellie and Dina get into before running into Jesse in Seattle in the game, and I think that will now come into play in the final 2 episodes of the season, but more on that in spoilers. Before they can debate whether to go back to Jackson, they hear this whistle. This is one of the 9 or 10 known Seraphite whistles, part of their communication code in the games. Each whistle means something different that you figure out as you play the game and start to hear them surrounding you. This one is known as the general call whistle, in which the scars let each other know where they are and wait for a response, kind of like the Marco to the Polo. If the call is not answered, the scars go into high alert. There is a response here, and I think it's just kind of their general answer whistle. Ellie, Dina, and Jesse witness a captured wolf being taken into this park to be executed by being strung up and sliced open with a scythe, exactly what they did to the wolves in the K-Mab station. In the game, Ellie witnesses this alone, and it goes down similarly, from the wolf offering to tell them what Isaac is planning, and then the ceremonial phrases of "he is nested in sin" and "free him so he may know her love." But this moves slower, so we see the Scar priest using this scythe to snap each of his shirt buttons, and now we hear another big whistle. This is the enemy found whistle, which indicates that a Seraphite has eyes on an enemy and is leading an attack or an ambush. Dina gets shot in the thigh. In the game, since Ellie is alone, she gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow. Ellie says she'll lead them away and tells Jesse to get Dina out. But then we hear... This is the moving up whistle sound, meaning the Seraphite is moving toward an enemy position to investigate and is asking for cover. And then as Ellie runs, you hear another whistle. This is the called shot whistle, and it precedes an arrow whizzing by Ellie. So this single sharp whistle sound made just before taking a shot is actually an old hunter's trick. You make a noise to make an unsuspecting prey, like a deer, look up just before you shoot, giving you a cleaner shot. So you go, and the deer's like, huh? And then they get it. In this case, it's usually a whistle a Seraphite makes before any shot, indicating to their companions that they're taking a shot, but also hoping to get the target to look up in their direction. You hear another one of these called shot whistles right before Scar fires a crossbow at Ellie. Then Ellie trips beneath the bushes and we hear a different whistle. This whistle sounds new compared to any of the ones I remember from the game. Based on the context, I'm wondering if it means I saw the target, but I lost them, but they're still close. Then we hear this whistle. Yeah, sounds like another enemy found whistle, like the one we heard before Dina was shot. It might mean that the group in pursuit of Dina and Jesse has eyes on them, or maybe they found someone else, like maybe a wolf. But then they sweep the area looking for Ellie, and we hear this whistle. Another call and response, which is their way of communicating with each other, I assume to make sure Ellie and Dina or Jesse didn't kill anyone in their group. So Ellie gets out and makes it to the hospital and finds it pretty heavily fortified. One of their dogs named Bonnie smells Ellie, but Ellie sneaks into a hole. So inside the hospital, Nora treats a wounded person, maybe from the wolf-Seraphite conflict that's been going on, and we see her pouring cleaner onto the bloody gauze when Ellie creeps up out of the shadows.
You remember me? Yeah, you remember me.
Yeah, Ellie is super creepy in the final act of this episode, totally wearing the black hat like Abby began this season. Ellie's kind of like a serial killer in these final scenes. This conversation is taken from this moment in the game. Like in the game, Nora warns if Ellie shoots her, every soldier will come running, and she tells Ellie, we could have killed you. And at first she indicates that she's sorry Ellie had to see it happen, and that sometimes at night she still hears Joel's screams, but...
Yeah, the little bitch got what he deserved.
Yeah, it's a smart move by Nora to try to soften Ellie with a play at remorse, but it is a trick. Clean her in the eyes, and she goes running. Ellie chases after Nora, firing wildly in this hospital. As in the game, Ellie's shooting spree is meant to parallel Joel's massacre in the St. Mary's Hospital to save Ellie. But whereas Joel was methodical going through a hospital, Ellie is frantic and sloppy in a hospital and gets overwhelmed. Nora gets to the sealed off area and finds the elevator shaft that Sergeant Elise Park mentioned in the opening scene, because Hanrahan did tell Elise not to tell anyone else about what's on the lower level of the hospital. So it is possible that Nora didn't know what was down here at first, but later she does seem to know what Spores will do to her. So I'm thinking that the wolves still warned each other about Spores in general, just might not have known that they were down here, because if they were, I would imagine a lot of them would not have wanted to work in that hospital. Remember, Elise said that these elevators were stuck on B1, but when Nora jumps on it, it drops all the way down, and she sees B2. That's the floor she goes out on, but it means the elevator beneath her is technically on B3. In the game, Ellie tackles Nora into a red lit lower area of the hospital, and that's kind of what's happening here. Ellie explores, and we hear the same pulsing hum that they heard before in the factory hallway. The airborne spores are thicker now, and Ellie leaves footprints in the spores that have collected on the floor. And now she sees an entire world, a kingdom made by the Cordyceps. Every surface is covered. Spores are everywhere. One medical worker in scrubs is kind of left in this twitching state to continue to breathe out the spores in a thick plume. The way it's frozen to the walls reminds me of the Hadley's Hope colonists in Aliens, the one who's stuck to the walls and is like, kill me. Ellie finds Elise's son, Leon, based on the L Park on his uniform. His body is also being consumed by the fungus. It's just frightening to see these two bodies look at Ellie with a kind of awareness, which you think is a human still alive inside of them, but it's not. It's actually the fungus twitching in Ellie's direction and sensing this prey to blow spores at. And the creepiest thing about this is, had they not had the human lungs and tracheas to blow these spores out of, the Cordyceps never would have been able to do this on its own. They are using human bodies as technology. With the ghostly yellow glow of Ellie's flashlight through the spores, there's something hauntingly beautiful about all of this. Ellie moves on and switches the breaker so that the halls are flooded in red light. Neil Druckmann said that, like in the game, they use red light like this to signal to the viewer that something bad is going to happen. In this case, it's Ellie reaching a new soulless low, like the red light gives her permission to let her heartless vengeance consume her. Ellie's moment with Nora plays out similarly to the game, but here, Tati Gabrielle gets an additional beat of realizing that Ellie is immune.
The immune girl, you're real.
And it calls back the opening scene of the season at the Firefly gravesite when Nora and Mel debated whether a girl being immune was even possible or a myth. Nora says it here with a bit of wonder, like there was a bit of hope or humanity all along. And now Nora takes what Joel did even more personally because of that.
He killed everyone in that hospital, including the only fucking person alive that can make a cure from you.
Nora says that the doctor was Abby's father and Joel shot him in the head. The fact that Ellie is hearing this information now is interesting. It is new, but the way Ellie responds is we're not sure if it's new for her.
I know.
So we could read this as Ellie just trying to sound cold and menacing and knowing everything to Nora, like she still knew all this and doesn't care. But I also wonder if Ellie did actually already know this, like already figured it out. And maybe next episode will show us that past memory where that knowledge began. But Ellie holsters her gun gun, and in the red light, she doesn't blink. Bella Ramsey looks vacant and almost bird-like. She picks up a pipe, like Abby turning back to pick up the golf club. And while in the game, Ellie whacks Nora in the head a few times to end it, now she goes for the leg first, like Abby did with Joel, and continues to stare at her like a serial killer, using this as an interrogation.
Where is she?
And now we flash back to this warm, pleasant moment.
Hey, kiddo.
Hi.
Whoa! So this is not Ellie's garage room where she started the season. This is a different bedroom in Joel's house at some earlier time when they were getting along better. Her hair is different. You can see some different sketches on the wall of like simpler times before she started freaking out about Kat and Dina. Now it's just, pictures of leaves and horses and stuff. Also, you can see a Weezer poster on the wall. Nothing's going wrong when you're listening to Weezer. And Joel says, "Hey, kiddo." Remember back in the season 2 premiere, he did say, "Hey, kiddo," but it wasn't to Ellie. That was a fake out, it was to Dina. But now the "Hey Kiddo" is meant for Ellie because things are better right now. And we're gonna explore how they're about to get worse. This is gonna be a flashback to how great of a day this was and how dark it's gonna end up next episode in episode 6. But as I said before, it tells us something that they changed what triggered this flashback from Ellie playing Future Days on the guitar in the theater as it is in the game to in the show, Ellie beating and torturing Nora in the hospital that triggered the flashback. So now this memory won't be framed by Ellie recalling the best of Joel, but rather the morally gray area that Joel occupies in her mind as Ellie tries to navigate how dark into that gray she can go before she loses herself, and if she already has. Okay, into our spoilers section. So if you've played the game, you can probably tell the next episode is gonna be Ellie's birthday flashback. But rather than starting in the woods, we're gonna start in her bedroom when Joel surprises her with this little trip out to a museum where he's gonna hand her the Apollo 11 tape, and it's just gonna be a wonderful countdown that's gonna remind us of what Pedro Pascal is gonna be doing in Fantastic Four First Steps. But also we're gonna learn what happened with Eugene, because we know from trailers that there's a clip of Ellie saying, "You swore." So we're thinking Eugene maybe had a Firefly connection to Salt Lake City. Maybe he was dealing weed with people out west, and he could have told someone who would later tell Abby that Joel is located in Jackson, and Joel killed him for that. And then after Joel does that, Ellie's gonna be like, "Why are you so worried about people finding you?" And that's how she's gonna find out Joel is hiding something terrible. And yes, Ellie is flashing back to this memory from beating Nora, because this memory isn't just going to be a nice Apollo 11 moment memory, but it's also gonna be the day that Ellie learned what kind of violent man Joel truly was. Also, Tommy is in Seattle. Good news, because it makes it closer to what happens in the game. In the game, you'll know that they already found a lot of the wolves in Abby's group, including Nick, after Tommy had tortured Nick for information. So I think once they catch up with where Tommy went after he and Jesse split up, they're gonna find Nick, and they're gonna find out everything Tommy had been doing to the wolves. Also, it means that Tommy's gonna be there when they catch up to Abby at the end of the season, and he's gonna get seriously wounded. And perhaps my favorite Easter egg of this episode, when they hint at what is down on B3 of this hospital, stuff that has been untouched since 2003 for 26 years, and Sergeant Elise Park saying not even rats. Folks, they're setting up the Rat King. Abby finds the Rat King when you play as her in the game, and I think they're saving that for season 3, unfortunately. But folks, we're getting the Rat King. It's down there, and nothing's touched it since 2003 for 26 years. It's gonna look insane. I can't wait. All right, comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Marisa Miranda, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Boss and subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.